Welcome back to part three, the financial ecosystem. This should be a very short video. I just wanted to kind of go through how I think the how the financial ecosystems, how they're contained, but yet they are interconnected. And this is very important because what one of the hypotheses here is that if you're interjecting fiat currency or saccharin into your body or artificial things, you're going to have a lot of poor outcomes with your ecosystems that should be self-regulated. Now, if you look at the three pictures I have here, you have your snow globe and you shake it up. Nothing is leaving that snow globe. All these things kind of go all out and about, and then they settle down. In your body, you have all kinds of systems that are all self-regulating. And then on the right-hand side, I looked up a picture of a biodome, and I got this. I don't know, you could call that a terrarium or whatever the word is for that, but maybe it's a geodesic dome greenhouse, if you will. But that system also, in a sense, will have its own self-contained habitat. So with this here, belief is that economies are self-regulated systems. Intervention into these systems can create winners and losers. That is one of the big takeaways I'm going to talk about with this whole concept of fiat currency going to zero and how you have fiat currency at the center of this solar system. In order to keep the wheels from falling off the whole damn thing, you need all kinds of intervention. And at all given points of time, when you're creating intervention, this is creating winners and losers by people that aren't elected necessarily to do the job. They could be bureaucrats that are appointed. They could be, I don't want to go into who could be doing all of this kind of stuff, but the point is that this is not the free market system that we've been led to believe. When you tamper with these systems, the sense of fairness is questioned. And right now, you can see this in virtually all markets where you're starting to see people. I'm heavily involved with the silver and silver miners, and you can see very heavily with them the whole sense of fairness has gone by the wayside, whereas they're calling all kinds of rigging by the banks. You can see a lot of their evidence. You can see all the fines that all the banks have paid. So when you have your investors thinking that all sense of fairness is out the window, you're questioning your free market system. So if you think of your financial ecosystems here, think big picture. Think of your universe, solar system, Earth, your countries, states, counties, and even your local jurisdictions, as all of your individual ecosystems then are interconnected with each other. So one of the concepts here is I wanted to go into the four forces of the economic universe. I'm building off of the four fundamental forces of physics, of energy. They talk about it that are gravity, electromagnetic force, strong nuclear force, and weak nuclear force. Now I'm not going to go into them per se because that's gonna go off topic a little too much. But you can look up the four forces and how our world interacts with the sun and how on a subatomic level all of these things interact. But what I tried to do was make a similar parallel with the financial ecosystems. So I believe that an economic ecosystem adheres to these fundamental forces. While this economic ecosystem is man-made, we observe laws of nature within. So for instance, there's all kinds of laws of nature within economics and psychology that we observe and we just take for granted. All of you technical guys out there, you all see the Fib retracements. With supply and demand, you can see how that affects price. You can see with efficiencies. Think about companies, survival of the fittest. You see this in nature where species will die off, or those with the worst genes, so to speak, or those that are not adapted for the environment, they will not reproduce. And that's the same concept you can find with businesses. The businesses that survive it's the survival of the fittest. They have the best efficiencies. They adapt. Now IBM has been around for forever. Now if they were still making calculator machines from 1940, they wouldn't be in business anymore. So they've adapted over the course of times. So with this, the four forces of the economic universe, I was just talking about this in the previous section. The strong nuclear force, I'm calling the rule of law, fairness in trade. Now, when things start breaking down the rule of law, just think about what was happening in the United States this past summer with all of these riots in all of these cities. When the rule of law starts breaking down, all of these businesses start getting looted. All of these people that put their heart and soul and all of their financial jewels into their businesses suddenly can't operate anymore. Um, think about depressed neighborhoods where you may have had a business there for 20 years, but there may be violence that came up over the last 3 or 4 years, and less people come into your business because the foot traffic, people are afraid of getting mugged coming into your business. So, likewise, fairness in trade. If you feel that the banks are pulling a fast one on you for instance, in the silver market, people start to lose faith in their government, in their economic systems. So very, very, very important in your economic universe is rule of law. This is the thing that binds everything together. Now, the weak nuclear force, I talk about the family and tribal units. Now, with this, it also has a little bit of decay in it because you're consuming food, perishables. Anyway, with this, your weak nuclear force, and it's called nuclear. What did we call our family? A nuclear family. So you have, for instance, your family then has a requirement of so many economic units it needs to sustain itself. It needs to have rent. It needs to, your family needs to buy food. So your family then will dictate your demand. So maybe 100 years ago, or 50 years, let's just say 50 years ago, maybe there was one TV in a house, one car in a driveway. And now, 50 years later, our culture has now told us every member of the family needs a TV. They all need an iPhone. They all need cars in the driveway. So the family units and cultural mores, in a sense, will also determine your demand. Now think about the demand in different countries that might not have the same economic prosperity as in the United States. If you're living in a rural area in a remote country, maybe you have, maybe you're growing your own food. Maybe you have chickens in your yard, and you're getting eggs, and you're mostly self-sustaining. Your economic demand through the ecosystem is not very much. You're relatively self-sustaining. But in this country, everything we have to buy essentially. So the weak nuclear force here is the family. That's kind of the demand variable within your economy. And look at what happens with COVID. If we shut down the families from traveling and you can't go out, you can't go to work, the demand shifted from I'm going to put money in gasoline to drive my car to work, and I'm going to put money into buying concert tickets, and that money then went into buying into the stock market, into buying Zoom, so people can meet virtually. So the weak nuclear force here is the family, is what I'm thinking is a lot of the demand in your economic system. Your electromagnetic force. Now that here is where I put gold at the center of all trade, because that has the relativity and value. And this transfers through all kinds of cultures throughout history. And gold has been the money, and this is what central banks all have. I mean, with the exception of Canada right now and potentially UK, you would have gold right now at all central banks. They're not holding Bitcoin, but why do all central banks have gold? Because that is pretty much the language that all countries will have to communicate with economic energy. Then with gravity here, I talk about global economic systems interacting. Like with gravity, you can't help but fall to the earth. Well, with global economic systems, you can't really help but fall into your neighbors. You have to more or less have trade with your neighbors. So you have, with this gravity, you have interconnected ecosystems that their laws don't necessarily translate to the jurisdiction over. So we may have a rule of law in the United States that's different in each one of our 50 states with mining. And then you go to Mexico, and they may have completely different laws about everything. And same thing with Canada. But what you have here is how they interconnect with each other, which is global trade. So the gravity here is how all of these economic systems are interactive with each other. And I'm going to leave that one off here.